Hello all, thank you all for joining us to our Fireside chat. Before we discuss Wirelane with Constantin, let me give you a quick overview of Coparion and why we invested into Wirelane in 2018. So Coparion is a venture capital fund based in Berlin and Cologne. We invest between 500K to 8 million in initial tickets and can invest up to 15 million per company over several rounds. And so far we've invested into companies like Grover, Hollydo, Parcelab, and Finoa, and of course Wirelane. We've invested into Wirelane back in 2018, predominantly because of two reasons. Because of the team, Constantin being a serial entrepreneur, amongst others, having founded the largest ticketing company in Spain and Germany before, and kind of the market, and was a bet on kind of the rise in e-mobility infrastructure back then. Constantin, thank you for joining me. You've been in the ticketing space before. Tell me, what brought you to e-mobility in the first place?
Yeah, it's a bit difficult to describe how I got into this space without knowing my past. I used to operate power plants, PV power plants, so I really fell in love with the concept of renewable energies. Back in the 2000s, there was this feed-in tariff scheme which enabled us to make quite juicy profit margins on PV power plants. So I built power plants in Czech Republic, Italy, and Germany. And through that initiative, I really got engaged in the renewable energy space, and at some point realized that because there is a certain fluctuation on the energy generation side, we need to have some buffer battery storage system on the consumption side, which would then eventually be the electric vehicle. So when Tesla came up with their first Model S in 2012, I instantly fell in love with the concept of e-mobility, and ever since I've been doing this as a business.
Interesting. Could you elaborate a little bit on kind of what is Wirelane doing? What is the business model?
So we've pivoted quite a bit over the past 5 years. We started as a software company only, and then acquired another business, started to develop our own hardware. We're not manufacturing hardware, so we have a contract manufacturer to do that for us. But we realized that our clients really want holistic solutions. So what we provide is a compelling solution consisting of the installation services, the operation and maintenance, basically the management of the entire charging infrastructure. Because our clients, merely B2B clients from the European space, they want out-of-the-box solutions. They want full-service solutions. So that's what we do. We build charging infrastructure, we operate charging infrastructure, and we do that as a service model.
Very interesting. Could you elaborate a little bit on kind of where do you stand currently? How many charge points do you operate? And also, what are the challenges that you are currently facing?
Yeah, so we developed our own backend, which you need to operate charging infrastructure, and we currently operate roughly 11,000 charge points on that backend. So next step will be to monetize more per charge point. So in the past, we've been doing a lot of SaaS, software as a service, for charge points. We've been doing a lot of transaction management, so basically billing, invoicing people for charging at our charge points. In the future, we'll monetize more on so-called greenhouse gas certificates. Some of you might have heard that we have ambitious plans in the European Union. There's a so-called Fit for 55 plan, so we'll reduce our CO2 emissions by 55% until 2030. And under that plan, there's very interesting government incentives, and one of them in Germany is greenhouse gas certificates. So we monetize those greenhouse gas certificates, which generate a windfall profit of 20 cents per kilowatt hour, which is a lot of money. So that's how charging infrastructure for the first time actually became profitable.
And what are the challenges that you are facing maybe in the future or currently?
Right. So if you had asked me about 5 or maybe even 3 years ago, I would have said to win clients, to really find people that need charging infrastructure, because when we started, let's not forget, e-mobility was tiny and we were one of the first companies in the market, and it was very difficult to find customers. Nowadays, fortunately, we don't have a problem finding customers anymore. It's more the installation capacities. It's more the supply chain problems. I mean, we all know that we're in the midst of a macroeconomic crisis, so supply chain is definitely a problem, and the installation capacities. We don't have enough people to install. That's one of the main challenges at the moment.
And kind of, could you maybe categorize what is the order of magnitude? What is kind of a sufficient amount of charge points that we need in Europe to really enable a good infrastructure?
Yeah, so the German, I mean, first of all, I obviously love megatrends as an entrepreneur, and underlying megatrends is always makes it much easier for you to create a sustainable business. So the ambitious goal of the German government alone is 1 million charge points in the public space until 2030. So we're at 60,000 at the moment. So that gives you a bit of a feeling how far away we still are. And on the European level, it's obviously much more than that. But Germany alone is a sufficiently large market for us to fulfill any business plan. The question is, again, how do we get those installed? How do we tackle all the regulatory hurdles? So that is more of the day-to-day job I'm facing. But we're still, I mean, we've been growing with a 128% CAGR over the last 4 periods, and then going to 148% growth from last year to this year. So it's even accelerating the growth. Top line is not that big of a problem, but it's really getting the stuff installed.
To achieve your ambitious plans in the future, kind of what debt and equity requirements do you see there?
Yeah, that's a good point. So coming from the PV industry, I'm quite used to work with debt instruments, because the way this works in the PV industry is you create an SPV, a special purpose vehicle, and then you inject equity, you inject debt, and you basically leverage the equity with debt to acquire power plants, to operate power plants. So in the EV world, it's quite similar. You need a debt tranche in order to get all the assets out of your books, because venture capitalists, as yourselves, they obviously don't like a lot of assets in the books. So what we typically do is we onboard a debt provider, which we have successfully done, and we then refinance the assets through a debt provider. And then all the money that goes into the company, the equity, is basically there for growth of the company, right? For sales and development of the tech stack. So in terms of capital requirements, I mean, to give you a bit of a flavor of where we stand, we've raised 31 million so far, 5 out of those from my own pocket, so I'm heavily invested in the company. We will raise another Series C next year of roughly 30 million euros. The company is currently fully funded, but next year we will most likely do a Series C of roughly 30 million.
And to kind of wrap up the fireside chat, can you a little bit elaborate on the vision of the company in the next 24 months? Where do you want to see the company?
Yeah, I will also maybe speak a little bit about revenue plans, top-line plans. I mean, the vision is obviously to provide ubiquitous charging infrastructure. I've been driving electric vehicle for 10 years myself, so I've suffered a lot from that lack of charging infrastructure. But in terms of commercial targets, we will top 2026, we will top 100 million euros in revenue. So we're currently at 8, having doubled that over the last 4 periods, and we'll continue to double that revenue until 2026. And that's basically the goal we want to achieve with the money we'll raise next year, turning the company into a billion-dollar company in 2026.
Well, that's great. Can you a little bit maybe also elaborate on kind of the USP, kind of to the audience? What is your USP? How do you differentiate from the competitors?
So we're being asked a lot, because when you Google charge point, you will find millions of results, obviously, and the differentiator is definitely not the piece of hardware, obviously. You need that, it's means to an end. But the main differentiator is that we were the first to operate charge points profitably using a very specific go-to-market approach. So we are fully focused on commercial real estate and hospitality, and especially in Germany. And through that go-to-market approach, we became sector leaders, and in that sector, we monetize GHG quota to the fullest. So we get all the GHG quota, the greenhouse gas quotas from our clients. We sell that to big oil companies, and thus became profitable in the operation of charging infrastructure. And that enabled us to onboard debt providers, which for the first time in the history of charging has happened in Germany. And that's a great achievement, I think. And it makes for our clients, it makes the solution very appealing, because they don't need any cash, they don't need to invest €0. So they basically get charging infrastructure for free from us, and we operate it for our clients long term, 10 to 15 years. That's the contract duration typically.
Well, great. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you for interviewing me, Felix, and
thank you very much,
up.
gentlemen.
And
thank you so
for
much.
having you.
Some applause for the guys. They started us off.